Hilchos Shechenim Perek, Chapter 4. If a person owns a aliyah loft that's situated above a house belonging to a friend, now one of the walls of the house, if one of the walls of the house falls, the case of Balabayis, so if one of the walls of the house falls, the owner of the loft is not required to pay any of the cost incurred by the owner of the house in repairing it. He may force the owner of the house to repair it as if it was originally. In Balabayis came from the Balaliyah, leaving his case Aliyah Shenafal. If one of the walls of the loft falls, the owner of the house cannot compel the owner of the loft to repair it. Atikar shel bayis, harihi shel balabayis, v'maziv shel atikar harihi shel balaliyah. The ceiling is the responsibility of the owner of the house. The plaster above it is the responsibility of the owner of the house. Base. Noflu shneim habayis v'aliyah hari shneim chilkim ba'etziv ba'avanum ba'offer. Both the house and the loft fall, both owners share equally the wood, the stones, and the sand. There's some of the stones are broken. We determine which of the stones were more likely to have broken: stones of the house, stones of the loft. But there was a Yeduam Bech and a Filim Nova Elyanot Taftin. You can determine with this manner how the stones fell. Whether the upper stones fell on the lower stones and destroyed them, or the lower stones slipped out and the upper stones fell on and were destroyed. If you cannot determine how the stones fell, both the whole stones and the broken stones should be divided equally. Our Bala Aliyah Bala. Our Bala Aliyah Bala Bayis Libnes Kadesh Yumna Aliyose Al Gabo V'Initzar Bala Aliyah Bainas Abayis Kashaya. When both structures fall and the owners of the loft tells the owner of the house to rebuild his home, they can build his loft upon it, but the owner of their home refuses it. The owner of the loft will rebuild the home to its original size and live inside of it. The owner of the loft may rebuild the home to its original size and live inside till the owner of the home reimburses him of all costs, and he must leave and rebuild those lofts upon it he desires. Neither of them is able to rebuild the building. The owner of the loft receives the third of the land, and the owner of the house receives 2/3 of the land. The owner of the house desires to rebuild his home. He should rebuild it as it was originally. Now, if he desires to change the structure of the walls, we listen to him. Desires to make the narrow or weaker, then we don't listen to him. Desires to build the ceiling and the heavier and the stronger beams, his desires he did. Desires to make them narrow, then they were originally his desires not listened to. If he wants to add a windows, we also don't listen to them. If he wants to subtract, then desires to use the heavier booms, we don't listen. I will my extremely listen. The 10 Bakirs to Grelin and Shino Yus and the Kalan Masha Shem late. Here, Halenis is Shemit Bedeva, Aliyah Shem Lea, me at the Clinic here, but Bakova and Shem. Rob is Daldalu Kiris Abais, Yordal Abra Bais, and Gil Tefasar's Fakam says Sarbaina. When beams of the ceiling sink lower in the center to the space of the house, if they reach within 10 tvachim of the ground, the owner of the house may destroy and rebuild the entire structure. If they do not reach that load under the law, they prevent them from doing so. For them, like Balabayas, Ani, Esker, the Famap, and Kiddish, Todd, Bay, Aksha, Sap, and Atikra, and Shermanley, and you need to get a Muckle stuck in a space. Even if the owner of the house tells the owner of the loft, I will rent you another place to live until I repair the ceiling, if his desire is not listened to him. The owner of the loft will tell him, I do not want the difficulty of moving from place to place so that you can repair your home. Here's still B'nei Zet. If an agreement was made between the two, and Mishnah gave on by specific other Chabila B'nei Sadeh should have come but Tafaskeres Elush Ek Mo in Caesar. If an agreement was made between the two of them, as long as the house is high enough that a person can enter while carrying an ordinary sized burden on his head, despite the fact that the beams have bent over, the owner may not tear it down. If however he cannot enter the carriage to burn unless he bends his head, he may tear it down, repair and rebuild it. And he can, the owner of the law may not prevent him, for this was the agreement they made at the outset. An olive press is built in the midst of a mountain. A garden is located upon it, and the top of the olive press becomes open for 12 or more. She has the base body caving. Owner of the garden may descend the sow the earth of olive press until the owner of the olive press makes a covering for the olive press. And the owner of the higher property can restore the earth of his garden and sow it. Taking his in time viv of the earth of Benim. But there are two gardens, one on top of the other, on the slope of the mountain, and there are vegetables growing on the surface of the earth between them. Any vegetables which the owner of the higher property can extend his hand to pull out the roots belongs to them, provided he does not strain himself. The hashar shall tacht, and the owner remainder belongs to the owner of the property. The owner of the higher property can reach the leaves of the vegetables. He cannot reach the roots. He should not take them. If, however, he does not take them, it should not be taken from his possession. When a tree that stands on the boundary line between two properties, even though it leans to the field belonging to one of them, then we can divide the fruits. Shataf nor as zis of Shalom Chabed Amar Allah Zising and Natal as in Shemali, Yeshuvaris of the Yamdim Kemi. For watchers away olive trees belong to one person and plants them in the field belong to another. The owner of the tree says, I want to make my olive trees his desires not listen to another in order that the land be settled, instead they should remain in their place. Bakar Alam the Gushin Shoslam Yachluku HaPeris. The river uproots the trees together with the earth when he replants them. The owner of the field and the owner of the olive tree should divide the fruits of the first 3 years. After 3 years, all the produce belongs to the owner of the field. If they were not uprooted together with the earth, the owner of the field is entitled to the entire benefit immediately. When a person sells his olive trees to be used as wood, if the agreement was that he should cut them down immediately, all the fruits they produce belong to the owner of the land. If the agreement was that he could cut them down whenever he desires, all the fruits that belong also to the owner of the trees. Also, the prophet may use the selfless when the tree was sold without specific agreement. If the produce was no more than a revis per saw beyond the cost of wealth, they belong to the owner of the olive tree. Also, the use of selfless when it's sorry, you have to keep the guidance.
Shechenim Perek 5. Today we're going to discuss, I should say in this parak, we're going to discuss Niske Shechenim. Aleph, Chotzer HaShutofin Kol Echamen Kefes Chavede Lasis Babei Shar Vedelis. When a courtyard is jointly owned by partners, each one can force the other person to build a gatekeeper's room, a door, or any other element that is sorely needed for a courtyard. Like the or let's say the customer or the local people to build. Other things, you cannot compel in regard to other matters, painting and designs. Now, if, let's say, one of the partners of the courtyard made, in addition to his own initiative, on his own initiative, and then the other demonstrated that he appreciated what his friend did, so he is held chayav for his share, an entire project, and he must pay his portion of the costs. When a person has a house in another courtyard besides the one where she lives, then the inhabitants of the courtyard in which she does not live can force him to contribute towards the building of the door or bolt in the lock. He cannot be compelled to contribute to other matters. If he dwells with them in the courtyard, it can be forced to contribute to everything. Dalit. Gimel. One of the owners of a house in the courtyard seeks to put an animal or a meal in the courtyard or to raise chickens there. His friends can prevent him from doing so. But that's what he's saying. With regards to other things that people are not accustomed to doing in the courtyard, the partners can prevent them from doing so. His bazes al haranar, except for doing laundry, for it was not the custom of the daughters of Israel to shame themselves by doing laundry at the riverside. In a courtyard owned jointly by several owners, or a lane that ends as a cul-de-sac, all the inhabitants of the lane or the courtyard can restrain one of their numbers that makes use of the lane only in a manner which other people living in the country can make use of lanes. Hey, one of the partners in the courtyard put either an animal or mill or like into the courtyard, and used to be shutafain, and the shutav was not meicha, as a ma'at below close one for yirtza. It may prevent them from doing so at any time. If he erected a partition of 10 tefachim high in front of the animal of the like, he established his claim to it. So his partners did not protest, but instead allowed the mechitza to remain, he forgoes his right to protest. When do we say this? In a court that is generally owned by partners. However, a person placed an animal in the chutzner belonging to another person, even if he makes a partition, he has not established his claim to it. What in the whole Maimid? Why? For it's known that the owner only lent him the space. What in the whole Maimid? Tanner Mekinai Magada Tanagin and Kietzaban. Similar halachas apply if one brought an oven or arranged or raised chickens of the like. For if one would say that the visitor established his claim to the space, the person will never let a space to a friend. Vav. If one of the partners in the chutzner desires to open up a new window from his house overlooking the courtyard, his friends may prevent him from doing so. Why? Because this allows the possibility of looking at him at all times. And if he opens such a window, he must close it. If partners in the courtyard open the entrances of house opposite the entrance of a friend's house, or a window opposite a friend's window, in the public domain, by contrast, the person may open up an entrance opposite a friend's entrance and the window opposite a friend's entrance. The guy can tell him, I am like the one of the public people in the public domain who sees you.
Nevertheless, even if a person should not open up a store opposite the entrance of a friend's courtyard. Passing by the public domain goes to and from, while the person will sit in the store the entire day and look at his friend's entrance. One of the partners in a courtyard purchase a home in another courtyard. He may not open an entrance for his new home into the courtyard that he shares. But even if he built a loft over his home, he's not entitled to open a new entrance for his courtyard, for he's making passage through the own courtyard slower. And it's the other partner in the courtyard. It is if the other partner in the courtyard had only one neighbor, and suddenly they were given many neighbors. One may, however, build an entrance to the loft within the one's home. If a person desires to divide his apartment into a teammate. From here we learn that if one of the partners in the chutzner brings people from another house to his own house, the partners in the courtyard may prevent him from doing so because he makes passage through the other courtyard. The person rents his house to the master of another household, but later brings his relatives and friends that dwell with him together in the house. The owner who rents the house can prevent him from doing so. If the entrance of one of the courtyards of the home of the partners was small, so again, if the entrance of a courtyard from the home of the partners was small, he may not enlarge it. Other partner can protest when the entrance and say, when your entrance is small, I could hide you from when you're making use of the courtyard. I cannot hide you from it when you do a big one. Similarly, a person who makes a larger entrance, he may not divide into two. For another person can protest and say, I'm able to hide myself. When there's only one entrance, if there are two entrances, I'm not able to hide myself. A person has a small entrance from his house to the Rishus Harabim, and he desires to enlarge it, or he has a wide entrance that he would like to divide into two. A person who lives opposite him, and needless to say, the people within the Rishus Harabim cannot prevent him from doing so. Inhabitants of a lane can compel each other to share the construction of a pole or a beam for the lane. A person has an entrance from his private domain to a lane. The inhabitants of the lane do not have the right to compel him to erect a gate for that entrance of the lane. You can tell him, I want to enter carrying my burden up to my entrance. When a lane has entrances to the Rishus Harabim at either of its ends, and the inhabitants of the lane desires to erect gates at the entrance of the lane, the people of the public domain may prevent them from doing so. Or at times, people in the public domain are pressed for space and enter the lane. When a person seeks to open an entrance from his home to a lane that ends in a cul-de-sac, the inhabitants of the lane may prevent him from doing so, because he makes passage through the courtyard slower. If the lane is opening the Rishus Harabim, he may at the outset open any openings he desires. A person has entrance to the home that he has been closed in a lane that ends in a cul-de-sac and may open it at any time. In parts, if however he has destroyed the door frames, the inhabitants of the lane can prevent them from doing so. If Bnei Mobi should be listed in Pischa Azir Mobi Acher Bnei Mobi Matan Lov Shem Yobalei Mas Mismad Nechelkim Mas Katzol Bnei Mobi. When one of the inhabitants of a lane desires to close the entrance his home and transfers to another lane, the inhabitants of the first lane may prevent him from doing so, for perhaps a tax will be levied against the lane, and the presence of another person reduces the share of the tax that the inhabitants of the lane must pay. There's no fixed tax levied on the inhabitants of the lane. The person may close the entrance whenever he desires. Tes Zayin. Hard to explain, I have a picture of it there. But basically, when there are 5 quarters that are open to the lane entering a cul-de-sac, all the inhabitants of the courtyard use the portion of the lane near the other courtyard, while the inhabitants of the other courtyard use the portion of the lane near the property. And if therefore the inhabitants of the innermost courtyard use the portion of the lane near all the others as well, near the property. The owner of the second courtyard built a bench in front of the entrance, blocking it. The owner of the courtyard may not prevent them from doing so. I'll call up Primis Map and Lum Nation Marbalov, but they're aware of him behind him, keeping that spell. Stabo. Him Balashnish Puzzle Hatzer Piz of Shani. We knew in Hazina Makavas Love Shane, Lily Stamish of Piscovachos. The owner of the second courtyard opens the second entrance between the courtyard and the outer courtyard. The owner of the outer courtyard may not prevent them from doing so. It is allowed to use it only in the land at the entrance. If, however, the owner of the second courtyard opens a second entrance between his courtyard and the third courtyard, and the owner of the inner courtyard may prevent them from doing so, for the owner of the second courtyard is allowed to use only the lane in the outside, is the first entrance to the exterior. Hilchos Shechenim Perek Shishi. Aleph Koifim Bnei Ha'ir Zeh Lasis Chemed L'Sayin L'Boriach L'Hir L'Livres Lahen Beis HaKnesses V'Likleins Seveteri Navi M'Ksum T'Shikr B'Hem Kol Mishir Zeh L'Riklis V'Nat Siver. The inhabitants of the city may compel each other to participate in the building of a wall, gates, a bolt of Shul. For the inhabitants and the purchasers, so that any member of the community who desires may read from it. We should look at Eretz Yisrael, Keif and Esim, meaning Beis Din Likach Leiderach V'Arba L'Chaysem Mishum Yishu Eretz Yisrael. Person buys a city in Eretz Yisrael, the Beis Din can compel him to purchase a path to the city from all the 4 directions for the sake of the settlement of the Eretz Yisrael. Keif and Bnei Bikaz Zel Asis B'Neim Chadetz B'Nei Chadetz. People who own fields amongst stretch of fields in the valley can force each other to dig a trench and dig a smaller trench around the valley. Although a person owns a chutzner in one city, if he also owns property in another city, the inhabitants of the latter city can compel him to participate in the digging of a cistern, caverns, irrigation ditches. He's not, however, compelled to join in other communal matters. He dwells together with them in that city. He's compelled to participate in all matters. When a levy is placed upon a city's inhabitants for the construction of the wall, the levy is made according to the proximity of the houses of the wall. Those whose homes are closer to the wall must pay more. Base Dido, Naislim Be Irbahan Varim at Sifum Tikan Chimba at Losses and Scar Production of Shimon as Medina. Whenever a person lives in a city for 12 months or buys a dwelling there, they must contribute together with all the inhabitants of the city of the improvement that must be made. The walls, the gates, the wages of the soldiers regard the city. Well, call payments for all things necessary for the protection of the cities collected from all the inhabitants, even from orphans, except for Talmid Chacham. Talmid Chacham does not need protection. The Torah protects them. Payment for the improvements of the streets is collected from the Talmid Chacham. People go and fix the streets themselves. The Tal Chacham should not go out to work with them. for it's not the practice of Adam Chacham to demean themselves in the presence of the Amoritz. Zayin Hayafei for Nahar, the Havi by Mayim, the Medina given the Afan Yisem, Shazus Kuslam, Kadesh Yashku, and Biminus to the same Harmim. The inhabitants of the city contracted the workers to dig a river, to bring cities to bring the water to the city and collect them from the orphans. But there's a benefit so that the fields of the vineyards are watered. Therefore, if it transpired that despite the work, the water did not come, since the orphans did not benefit, everything that was taken from them should be returned to them. The inhabitants of the lane can force each other to prevent the tailor, leather craftsman, or any other craftsman from opening a business in that lane. If a craftsman lived in the lane and no preface was lodged against the practice of the craft, so the owner of the first establishment cannot prevent the clearing, saying, "You are destroying my livelihood." This applies even if he comes from another lane, for this trade is already practiced in the lane. However, a stranger from another city comes to establish a store next to a person's store, or a bathhouse next to the person's bathhouse, they can prevent it from doing so. If, however, he pays the head tax or the key together with them, they cannot prevent it from establishing the business. When perfume travels from city to city, when perfume merchants travel from city to city, the inhabitants of the city may prevent them from selling their wares. For it is not another ordinance established by Ezra for these merchants to travel in a manner so that they perform will be easily available for Jewish women. They may not, however, establish a fixed place where they sit and sell their wares, unless the inhabitants agree. May establish a fixed place wherever he desires. The Sefer which means when merchants bring their wares to sell in cities, the inhabitants of the city may prevent them from doing so. If, however, they may sell their wares only in the market, they cannot prevent them, providing that they sell their wares only in the marketplace. They may not, however, go from door to door, selling them even on the market. If they have an outstanding loan in the city, they are permitted to sell what is necessary for the livelihood, even on the days other than the market day, until they repay their loan and move on. One of the habits of the lane that ends in a cul-de-sac desires to open up a profession as a bloodletter, a weaver, a teacher. The habits of the lane may prevent him, for he increases the number of people coming in and going out of the lane. A person who owns a house in a clear share, but others may not rent it to a doctor, a bloodletter, or a weaver. True scribes may write legal contracts for a teacher or the Tanigish Akum. If a store is located in the courtyard, the neighbors can protest, telling the owner, we cannot sleep because of the noise made by the people going in and out. Instead, he should perform his work and always sell in the marketplace. They may not, however, protest against him, saying, we cannot sleep because of the noise made by your hammer or your mill, for he has already established his right to perform these activities. Person may teach Jewish children in his house. The other partners in the lane may not protest against him, saying we cannot sleep because of the noise made by the school children. One person owns a sister within a house belonging to a friend. He may enter only when it is customary for people to enter, and may depart when it is customary for people to depart. They both are entitled to make a lock on the entrance of the cistern. The owner of the home, because of the suspicion concerning his wife, so that he will not be able to enter only what he owns.
the Yitzim, the Shushadev, and the other Yitzim. When one person owns a garden and those entrances with the garden belonging to a friend, he may enter only when it's customary for people to enter. Machnis, the Tichik Targonim, the Ikonis Mtev Lasada Acheres. Achitz is it as a derech. Clearly, as a derech, the Ratzad Medash name as a Nifas Yitzim, Shushadev, Mafas Tichik Targonim, the Ikonis Mtev Lasada Acheres, and Cholach Mehen, Nifto Akab, the Saber, as it is a derech, also not Tzad. They both agree to move the path to the side of the garden, and the owner of the inner garden may enter and depart when he desires. He may bring merchants in. He may not, however, enter into another field. Either of the parties could prevent them from doing so. Selling vegetables on the path that he placed on the side.